Thank you very much for asking me to come here at this youth conference. As you have heard, I haven't been to a management college. I haven't been in business or the corporate sector, but I've had a lot to deal with them in either governmental capacity or from the Reserve Bank of India. Also, that the earlier speaker was talking about generational difference. My generational difference with you is probably much greater. India of my time was very different. What I want to do today is I don't want to talk very much about myself or my experience unless it is relevant to what I believe is also currently applicable, currently of some interest to those who are here. The one point I want to highlight is about India. That India of my days was very, very different from the India of your time. But one thing common, which is a matter of some pride to me and I'm sure to you, you hear a lot about rising India today in terms of economic growth, in terms of its ability to do what it wants to do, in technology as a leader in technology, IT, and a lot of other sectors, banking, finance, and all that. So that is rising India. It may be fluctuating, but there is a concept in your generation, I am sure, that India has arrived, as it were. The point I want to highlight to you is that the biggest strength of India is not what happens today or what happened at that time. The biggest strength of India is really freedom. Unlike most developing countries, in my time, I am from the post-colonial world. Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister when I was in college. You may be you may be surprised to know. But what was interesting was, and this may come as a student of economics, I am sure you have read about it, and you have probably thought about it also, that India was a pioneer in development planning. In the post-colonial age, the biggest challenge that the developing world faced, we used to be a country of primary production. Cottons we produce, send it to Scotland, and you buy textiles. That was the pre-colonial world. India was the pioneer in saying, no, we must move to industrialization. And that's why you had the emergence of development planning. I remember as a student, and when I was studying in Calcutta, economics, in my invitation it was said, why did you choose economics? I did not choose economics. It just so happened that that was the call of the day. Just as, for example, today, management, finance, corporate sector has become a very attractive destination. For us, development planning and the whole thing of making India an industrialized nation, not dependent on imports from abroad, but a country which can do what it wants to do. Now we failed. And that's always an issue. Because what you decide as innovative, what you decide to do as a change from the past becomes ingrained, because innovation and changing that model of development was very difficult. I remember 1970s, I remember the balance of payments crises of our time. It was a persistent crisis. The same industrialization policy, which was otherwise a very excellent idea, was based on protectionism. And what protectionism did was to effect that you imported raw materials and produced at high cost. And you may remember, at least your parents would remember, it was a control regime. Capacities were low, our financial base was low, But there was a hesitation to change, and it may surprise you to know why. One was, of course, the political issue. It was controls, licensing, and I was in the Ministry of Industry at that time, responsible for import licensing. You will be surprised to know I was very young, but it just so happened that I was there. And for corporates, industrial licensing. I had just come back from abroad after Oxford, Cambridge, and my first job was with the World Bank, which I resigned. And when I came back, sorry to be autobiographical, I was trying to avoid that, but the interesting thing was that because of people that I knew in the government service, that time government service was the most attractive destination. I was appointed to that job at a very early age. And after I used to chair the so-called supplementary licensing committee for corporates. And I was surprised that in the whole year, there used to be something called Director General. I don't know a student of economics, whether you are reading Indian economic history also. There used to be a thing called Directorate of DGTD, which was in charge of indigenous clearance, that you were allowed to import only if it was not indigenously available, irrespective of the cost. And having been around, I mean, although this job was the most powerful job, and I thought that, let me see, I looked back, and what I found, that after the licensing process, all that we were able to save in terms of foreign exchange, in those days, I mean, it may, again, is an economic thing, that you use international prices to value the products, that all that we changed was about 18 crores out of 900 crores. So I launched a project to give up import licensing, allow the companies to import and so on and so forth. That's a long story. But the most important obstacle to reforms was from the civil service. Those who were in charge of giving you indigenous clearance. I was told by a colleague of mine from the DGTD, when we got the approval of the government to introduce automatic licensing or whatever it was called in those days, said, please wait for 2 months. I said, why? Why do you want to wait? Why not introduce it from January 1? And I was told that because his daughter's marriage is in March, so nobody will come to the reception. And so I started laughing and we held it back for 2 months. The reason why I'm saying, so there was that thing, power. And the second thing you'll be surprised to know was those who were in corporate sector, they were the highest opponents of liberalization. Why? You have a rayon plant, monopoly. You charge whatever you want to charge. Price control, and so on and so forth. I'm sorry, I can go on talking, but the whole point was that India was a pioneer in development planning. The problem was we did not change to the new realities which had become sort of more or less embedded in our economic policy because of what is in the economic literature called the vested interest or interest of Mansoor Olson. I am sure you have read that it's very difficult to change policy once it is in place because some people are benefiting from it. The reason why I'm mentioning this point is that today, again, don't take India for granted. You have the choice to do what you want. You have the ability to do what you want. There is no area in which India can't do better. And the main thing, the main challenge before us is rather than get marooned or get caught up in our own successes, how do we review our own work and say, yes, this is where we require a change. The other point I want to make on the macro, on the big thing, on which you also, as the young generation, should be involved, is that while the greatest boon of India is political freedom, there have been some political developments which are not in our interest. For example, the whole principle of our constitution, parliamentary democracy, is twofold. One, a majority party, Two, collective responsibility of the cabinet. All that has disappeared. You read newspapers. I'm sure that you don't follow politics closely, or maybe you do. But 17 people, a party with 17 members, 18 members, has the blackmail power. Why? It's our doing. The so-called anti-defection law, where if you belong to a party and you leave the party, you defect. You have to choose re-election. But if you have your own party, you can switch sides. Now you see the reverse incentive in economic terms. If you are a leader with 3 constituencies, you will have your own party. Why should you join a large party? So what has happened is that you have given an incentive for splitting, for having your own party if you are a leader. Therefore, all our parties, and I want you to study this in one of your courses or whatever, all our parties have a leader. 5, 10, 15, 20, 2 large parties, but none of them can aspire to be it. So you need a political reform. Apply anti-defection law also to the parties which join the cabinet. That was the fundamental principle. And let me not go on and on because I've written a book on this also, so I can just take a lot of your time. But the point, essential point that I want to make to you now, coming back to the main point that you raised with me, was that what we can learn from my story, as it were. I mean, the Arnav Sahani has been very kind to write to me. And what attracted me to economics. What attracted us to economics was what I have said now. The development economics was the primary focus, just as for you, management or business or corporate sector. And if you are doing well in your exams or wherever, you would go there and then go to business school. In our time, you did, if you did reasonably well, you did economics or physics in science area, and then proceeded to Cambridge, or which had all the top economists of our time, which you must be reading about also. So and so on and so forth. So it is all. It's not really a choice. It is a bit of an accident what you choose as a profession, which is with the wave of the day. So today it's different story. I don't have much to be able to share with you on, because my entire career was, as you have heard, in public sector, governmental sector and so on. And there also it was mainly chance, as it were. I mean, I didn't belong to a service permanently. I was just offered different kinds of jobs, which I took thanks to those who I had worked with and those who were the leaders of this country at that particular point of time. And all of this happened, and by choice. So if I were, in the Arnab's letter to me, it was said that what are the lessons that you can learn about choices of professions? Based on my own experience, so one, that whatever I say is probably not relevant. Having said this, let me just make 3 or 4 points about what I feel that in a highly, what you might call, brilliant class, the youth conference that we are organizing, and everything reveals it, people who are interested in doing good for India. There are a few principles that I would highlight that were also mentioned by the preceding speaker. The first and foremost is that yes, all of us need money. Whichever job you are doing, you need money to live. But that, I hope and I feel, should not be the primary consideration for choosing a profession or a job. And there is nothing to stop an economics student to change, to go into law, to go into a different profession. All of us could have gone into different professions. Many of my colleagues in Cambridge, they went into different professions. Professor, teacher, all your teachers are there, brilliant teachers. So don't choose a profession because it gives you money. Choose a profession because this is what you want to do, this is what pleases you. There should be nothing to stop you from being a researcher or a teacher or a leader of a school or rural development, whatever. So this is one thing based on my own. I have changed many jobs, even in the public sector, but they were all because the opportunity that came was important. So whatever you are doing, money should not be the prime consideration, the job pay. And two, that you should be prepared to move and relocate if some new opportunity comes. If you are a postgraduate in economics, if you have a PhD in economics, there is nothing to stop you from going into management also, or doing law. Switch, if you can, if you want to. And you can switch from one line to the other depending on how good your performance is. So this would be my suggestion, that pursue the career because it interests you. This is something which inspires you. And of course, all of us need money. But being a professor doesn't give you even 1/5 of the salary that you would start with in something else. If you are born to be a lawyer, it will take you 10 years to get to a place, get to a point where you can earn a living. But you are a self-employed entrepreneur, you may be interested, you may be, and whatever you can do it the best you can. It doesn't mean that you have to beat others. I don't believe in that part. It is the best that I can do, but you will find there are people, better people. I mean, SRCC, the college that you have been to have been highly competitive. But all of you, there may be some more brilliant than the others because they are more interested in some subject. Doesn't matter, but I do my best. So choose what you like to do. Don't go after money or trying to be the best. Do the best you can. Don't be afraid of relocating if some new opportunity comes. And similarly, there was, about economics, it doesn't have to be economics or management. It can be completely different if something else attracts you. And don't be afraid. If you go abroad, you will find that there are so many choices. People come from different backgrounds and get into different subjects altogether. And there is nothing to stop it. The other, and it's an equally, if not more important issue than anything that I have said, is don't look for a lifelong profession, if possible, or a lifelong job. You take a job because it interests you today. You take a job, do your best, new opportunities would come up. And if new opportunities come, you move. Now there I want to emphasize that there is a, based on my perspective may not be currently applicable as I say, that I am from different times altogether. That please don't ignore public institutions. Don't ignore government jobs. Don't reject public sector corporates. Don't reject the best all India services. The only qualification that I would want to make to this, based on my personal experience, is that most of these jobs give you job guarantee for life. But be prepared to change. There is nothing, I tell you, and I can say this from my personal experience, if you join a government service, there is nothing more challenging, or the Reserve Bank of India, than some of the at the relatively lower level, like say district collector in our country. An IAS officer would become a district collector in about, I think, 10 years or 12 years as a young person. You can't imagine the challenges that he faces. Public services, all of us worry about corruption. There was a question also about political shape of our country, delivery of public services. All of us worry malnutrition, that a country where 20% of GDP is with 100 billionaires or so on, also has 500 million people who don't have enough to eat and enough to eat or have malnutrition or enough health. You don't have primary schools where teachers are present. But if you are a district collector, you can change all this. And I have seen this with my own eyes in some of the districts where, in some of the other areas, like say close to Delhi and close to Bombay, where I work, in Thana, there was a district collector who changed the whole thing, because I had visited him once, and I found that the total change, there was no corruption. The villages were taking control of their own destinies, as it were. Similarly, if you go to Rajasthan, there is a Bodh school. There is a blackboard where if teachers don't come, somebody would write, all the villagers would come there, and they have a meeting. So what I'm trying to get at is that the primary challenge before India is how do you reduce inequalities as a country? How do we use our public resources to deliver services to the people of India who are deprived? It doesn't mean that you must curb those who are making the most of our fortunes. But it is a more positive stance that if you get an opportunity to join a good service, please do it. But don't take it as a lifetime. The best opportunities are once you get into the hierarchy and so on and so forth, everything disappears. Because you become the sort of pigeons of the minister. They keep on exchanging this, that and the other, transferring. But before you get there, you have an opportunity. So I don't have much to say about my own career or whatever, but I would say that I was very fortunate in moving from job to job, as it were, having the first-hand experience, getting the cooperation of the people, but it's not very relevant to the day of today when the opportunities are immense. And I really tell you that you are much more fortunate in a way than we were in our time, when we were caught up in a completely different strata, but still opportunity is open, and we were able to take advantage. So let me just stop here and maybe spend some time with you in answering the kind of questions that you have in mind. And these don't just have to relate to what I have said, but what is foremost on your mind about choice of professions, about what you should be doing. That would be nice too. So here I am. Yeah, right here. Let me get some water. To make notes more accessible in the particularly non-organized sector, where inflation has led to 5-fold increases in prices. So that's why it was introduced. And I'm sure down the road, and you have seen that 1 rupee notes are no longer available. 5 rupee notes are also, I think, have become out of circulation. And soon you may be moving up the ladder. It's just what you might call an executive convenience decision. That's all.
Good afternoon, sir.
In my time, coffee used to cost 4 annas. If you remember what annas were, 25 paise. In my college.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, as you talked about politics in your speech, for example.
Sir, in the present scenario, politics is one area which is being criticized by all horizons of people, especially by the youth. So don't you think that people of your stature, holding such positions with brilliant minds, should do something about it? Because at the end of the day, politics is something which is hampering our development on a large scale.
I agree with you that this particular opportunity should be taken by those who are the political leaders. The situation has changed quite dramatically, as you can see, in the last, since '89. I remember after that we have had 9 governments. I still remember that when Mr. Chidambaram, who is the finance minister now, there was a United Front government, and he was the finance minister then, and he asked me to go to the RBI. At that particular point of time, it was supposed to be a temporary government, and so it turned out to be. Then you had Narasimha Rao, Vajpayee government, Narasimha Rao government, 5-year terms. But if you exclude these 3 governments, you find that instability has become, that the average life of our government is only 1.5 years. And parties have split. So I agree with you that those who are in power, I have spoken about it in Parliament when I was a member, but then it has to be done. Now everybody's sort of response, those who are in power, is how can I do it, what would the small parties do? I need that to pass legislation, you need the support of small parties. Therefore you can't change this anti-defection law. But now I feel that you have to, even if it means that I change by ordinance. I seek re-election, and I am sure people would vote. Because you don't want this kind of blackmailing, that you want to hold the government responsible and accountable. And where is the primary principle of Constitution of India? That the majority party would form a government which will be collectively responsible to Parliament. Everybody who reads, he reads, somebody is saying something, members of cabinet, they decide. Why join the? So if it has to be done, the only issue that you face as young people is, will it happen in the constitutional way, or will it happen because there will be an uprising? I think India is at crossroads in that sense. So I hope we will see a change, that we will have a leadership which is willing to take the call. But I don't know. If you look at Middle East, who could have told that these countries will break down? So you have asked me a very important question, to which yes, you have complete distaste of corruption and so on. So somebody, I hope, will have a leader sometime before we break down, who will take this responsibility. We are talking a lot, for example, why should ministers allocate land? Tell me. The hangover of the planning era. Public resources being allocated by these short-term ministers. What do you expect? Anyway, let me not go into it. I agree with you. We have failed. My generation has failed.
Thank you, sir.
Profession which interests us, right? But in a country like India, where from the beginning only we are not exposed to so many things. Like suppose I have observed, like people who are more well off in India, or people who are rich or something, they have more exposure to different things, so that they can explore what they really like and what they really don't. Suppose if somebody is not very well off, they have only they have to study. Like their parents would say, you have to study to get a good job. So that person would really not know what actually is the thing which interests him or her. So what do we do then? Like it's a dilemma. Suppose even if I know what interests me, but I can't pursue that thing, and something else can also happen that I don't really know yet that what interests me. So what do we go about? Like how do we go about it?
No, I think again, there is no easy answer to your question if I understood correctly. Unless we get the kind of leadership which the country needs today. In an environment where public services, we spend how many thousand crores, you must be reading, on providing public services. 50% of it is diverted. We all know, there's a planning commission study. So I think India needs a completely new path in that sense. Democracy, freedom, but accountable of the government, of the people, and by the people, that they should be accountable to the people also. But we are not as yet. I don't answer your question, I know. But hopefully, I don't want to mention, but some movement would start. Movement has started but failed. But over a period of time, it should happen, I hope. But don't, underestimate the challenges that we face.
So I just want to ask one more thing. Suppose if we face a dilemma in life somewhere, that there is a confusion. Like I want to pursue what interests me, or I want to do what I have to do. So what do I do about? Like it's an obligation to do something.
No. If you have to do something, do it. That's part of life. But if you have the option, and I think many of us have the option, then choose what you want to do and choose what you can actually deliver. It doesn't mean that you are subsidizing or but there is no reason why we should not be involved in public distribution system ourselves.
Get rid of a personality of your brilliance over my query. My question is, in the political and economic scenario, and given the fact that the at this thank you.
I'm sure I couldn't hear because the mic, there is some problem with the mic.
Sir, I'll repeat the question. He is asking how important is it for the RBI to reduce the interest rates? How interest of the nation for the RBI to reduce the rates? That's the question, sir.
No, you see, I don't want to comment on the RBI interest rates. They are not something that I should be discussing at all. It's a matter of trade-offs, options, and what they have done. They have reduced interest rates before. So I think we just take it as that. How does 25 basis points here or there matter, except signaling? And you have trade-off between inflation and between growth. So you always face that kind of a problem, just as you face a problem in choosing your optional papers. Should I take political science as an optional paper or do finance? It's that sort of a thing. So nothing, I don't defend it, I don't offend it.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, just like to ask that China's growth story has been phenomenal in the last decade or so. Can India catch up with China in the next 20 or 30 years, and how can the youth contribute in it?
No, my simple answer is that we shouldn't compare ourselves with China or any other country. We should compare ourselves with ourselves. It is the same country with the same policies in the 80s as well as in the 90s. We had achieved 8.5% rate of growth for more than 4 or 5 years. Then we ended with a crisis. So you compare yourself to your own situation. India has the opportunity, India has the capability, do the best and hold your government responsible. For example, just take this. Same thing which goes into political aspect that I talked about, small parties and so on. Why, everybody, all the headlines, every newspaper that you read, pink papers and so on, talked about FDI. Am I right? FDI in retail, FDI here, FDI there. It is the same FDI, same policy, which gave you 9% rate of growth for 4 years. The problem is we talk, do not do. My advice to all policymakers is, that don't talk, do what you can. But do it. Don't promise I will do it. You follow what I am saying? Don't promise your parents that you will top the list.
Thank you very much, sir. The next question.
Good afternoon, sir. I actually hello. Yeah. So I actually have two parts to my question. One, you just now talked about the Planning Commission's report that 50% of the funds are diverted. Now, the planning hello. The Planning Commission itself says that 50% of funds are diverted, and then the same Planning Commission cannot do anything about it. Why are we so content on, as you said, talking about all that we know and showing off that we know this fact that this is wrong, this is wrong? Why are we not keen on doing something about it? And number two, the recent slowdown in the economy, the Indian economy, is it, does it indicate that it's high time that we stop talking about India rising? I mean, we are after all 65 years old now. Till what time do we expect ourselves to call ourselves rising and compare ourselves with the likes of South Africa? Isn't it high time that we upgrade ourselves and start competing with the top countries in the world?
No, I agree entirely with your second point. Since that it's not important for Indian people. 500 million of them, half of our country doesn't have enough to eat. Then how do you rank in terms of China? What is important is how we are doing in the first part of your question. If you have done a study which says 46% is diverted, why don't you do something about it? That's the real heart, and I can't tell you why we don't do it, because then you'd have to disturb the balance, you'd have to affect the corrupt, you would have to affect the PDS. But there is no desire to reform the system. You have lots of ideas in the literature, in what people are saying, but there is no great desire, because you will rock the boat. So that's where we are. But freedom, it is still ours to do what we want. So I hope something will happen.
This is the last question, sir.
I can say in the Reserve Bank of India, we abolished foreign exchange regulations. What happened?
So we are a little short of time, so this is the last question to you, sir.
Yeah.
So you've been the governor of RBI and have been in a bureaucratic career all your life, sir. So my question to you would be, sir, could you please motivate me to join civil services as a profession, because I'm very interested in joining the public sector. So could you please tell me how it would help me in life and how it has helped you and as such, sir. So the attraction of civil services, sir. Thank you.
No, I was very fortunate, and as I say, by accident as it were, in getting the top positions in the government and RBI at a very young age. And there was this inspirational call, and I had worked. But I think you can learn a great deal if after leaving, as you join one of the top public sector institutions. I won't name them, but out of 100 institutions, there are 10 or 15 of them which are absolutely first rate. And you would find the staff, no hierarchy, no particular problem. And, you can, after that, the horizons open. But the only point I add is don't take it as a permanent job. The problem in the public sector is this permanence, hierarchy, and then it narrows. So you take an incentive yourself to move.
Thank you very much.
I left Ministry of Industry after 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for joining us today at Youth Conference.
Great pleasure. And once again, my apologies for being so out of date. Thank you.